Well, welcome back to another exciting session this afternoon in our Changing Spaces conference. I'm sure we all enjoyed the Technology Hub, and now we look forward to hearing Sarah Slade talk about the State Library of Victoria's experiences. Sarah is a member of the senior leadership team at the State Library of Victoria and rejoices in the title Director Enablers, which is, I think, a wonderful title. And that area is responsible for overseeing the library's strategy, infrastructure, people, and projects and finance branches at the State Library. Between 2018 and 2020, Sarah was the director responsible for the library's $88 million Vision 2020 redevelopment project. Sarah has worked at the State Library of Victoria for the past 15 years in various roles as Director Project Management Office, Head of Digital Engagement and Collection Services, and as Storage Preservation and Conservation Manager. We look forward very much to hearing Sarah's perspectives on the vision and its realization at the State Library of Victoria. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. So as I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are all meeting, each of us in our different locations, and pay my respect to their elders, past and present, and to the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. So 6 years ago, the Victorian Minister for Creative Industries announced a significant commitment from the government to begin the transformation of State Library Victoria. That commitment came on the back of a promise made by the library that for every $2 of government funding, the library would raise $1 itself. It was an ambitious proposal which required the library to raise over $28 million through philanthropic and community fundraising, matching the government's $60.4 million. So we had $88.1 million in total to make the transformation of our library a reality. And we called the project Vision 2020. On the surface, Vision 2020 was more about spaces, revitalised space, was about more spaces, revitalised spaces, and new services for library users. Physically, we needed to increase usable public space by 40% and add a further 70% seating capacity. And the reason then was simple. State Library Victoria, with 2 million physical visitors a year, was already Australia's busiest library, and it was at bursting point. That visitation was also growing significantly year on year. Vision 2020 was also to fulfil the library's full potential by reopening long neglected heritage rooms to increase the library's public amenity, and through flexible design, provide much needed revenue as venues for hire. Vision 2020 was also about maximising access in the broadest sense. Mobility access, of course, but also increased access for new and emerging user groups by providing spaces that welcomed them and worked for their specific needs, rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. Over the past decade, we experienced a 200% growth in the number of children and families that were using the library. This clear community demand provided us with an opportunity to strengthen our focus on early childhood literacy and engagement with younger readers. Victoria's rapidly expanding early stage startup sector had become a force in the Victorian economy at the time, generating $4.6 billion in 2019 and employing almost 19,000 people. The Vision 2020 project allowed us to look at the support we could provide to very early stage entrepreneurs and help build this increasingly important sector. In a normal year, a third of the library's users were students, often working on collaborative projects in groups. Vision 2020 allowed us to rethink our spaces so that collaborative work and silent study could coexist to everyone's satisfaction. These opportunities, among many others, were informing our vision, but underpinning it was a realisation that library buildings, as you'd all know, especially our library, contain more than people and collections. They contain and communicate ambition, hopes, and confidence in the future. As Winston Churchill said, we shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us. Therein is a very weighty responsibility that we felt on our shoulders. The State Library has a rich and celebrated architectural heritage. Those of you who've been there will realise this, going back to Joseph Reed's original 1950s designs. And the library once housed the National Gallery of Victoria and art schools. It housed Melbourne Museum and technical schools teaching the latest technologies, such at the time as the telegraph. So while you're watching this, for many years, this shows the evolution of the library over a number of years. And for many years, it was commonly known as the institution, and in many ways was the birthplace of much of Melbourne's cultural growth. It's been added to, as you can see, in numerous expansions and redevelopments to become 23 interconnected buildings, occupying a full city block in central Melbourne. Building into that heritage in a way that meaningfully reflected hopes and ambitions of our communities while honouring the institution's important history required a community of minds. And we consulted with users of the library, we took advice from historians, from architects, from engineers, heritage, and other experts. We talked to our staff, we talked to those in universities, in government, in cultural and business sectors, along with our wonderful colleagues in public libraries across Victoria. And we took those conversations very seriously, so much so that we undertook a community co-design process. And here in a short video is how that worked with one of our most important stakeholder groups, children.
I like how the State Library is really big and it's like free space for study and it's very quiet.
I felt like I was in a big cave that's no one's there. It was so silent, so you can do silent things. I never get silent in my house.
A co-design process for Vision 2020 is about engaging with the future users of the library.
The main reason we've decided to work through a co-design process is because the needs of your audience are just crucial. If you're going to design a space for a particular group of people, the first thing you need to do is actually ask them what they want.
This morning we were visited by people from the State Library and they asked our grade 5-6 students to come up with some ideas about how to design the new library spaces.
I thought there was enough spaces to read and study. I was thinking of maybe table tennis somewhere else.
We could use the ping pong table and rock climbing when someone's studying really hard for a whole day at the library and then they might need a break and go maybe play ping pong or something,
So today we've attended the baby bounce and the storytelling sessions that the library hold every week, and we asked the family members along with their children to actually engage with us and tell us what they want in our big dream library. So we actually brought them into the space that is going to be the child's centre in the new redevelopment of the library and just telling them to imagine, if anything was a possibility, what it is that they want.
So this morning we were running co-design workshops with the students from Upwey High School. And we wanted to think a little bit about how they might use the library spaces.
State Library's massive and some of the desks are old and we were just thinking of putting a modern edge to it.
So with the big walls and everything, it just reminds you of how small you are. We might be able to have a place where we don't necessarily have to be quiet all the time. We can be in a group studying together and sharing ideas. State Library is a big place in our city and a lot of people are going in there. So to be one of the 4 schools that are given a chance to have our word in how it's going to be made and everything is pretty cool.
So these ideas were distilled by our outstanding architects, who were Architectus and Schmidt-Hammer-Larsen, culminating in the designs that were announced in March 2017. And here's what they looked like in the end. So with all the designs in place, construction began, and the enormous logistical ballet of redeveloping a heritage building, when ironically nowadays giving this talk, while never closing it to the public, even for a single day, began. So the build required us to effectively work in two halves, blocking access to one side of the library while opening the other. This was a massively complex undertaking, but the public didn't see it. What they saw from the street was scaffold and boardings beginning to obscure one of the city's iconic heritage buildings. But even as the building was being hidden behind construction covers, it provided opportunities for us to engage with the community.
A group of RMIT students from communication design, architecture and fashion were invited to take part in a competition to design artwork for the hoarding, which will go across the front of the Swanston Street building as we undertake our transformation. So every day this building is filled with students, and this project was so special because we were inviting students to come in and interpret the collection.
This partnership is an amazing opportunity for the State Library and RMIT, two of the main institutions in the northern end of the CBD, to show how they engage with the city. This particular learning environment exposes the students to what it's like to work with an actual client in an actual real-world situation. One of the great opportunities about this project is the students got access to the collections and also to the librarians. The students scoured the collections for things that interested them, using their interests to cut a cross-section through what exists in the State Library's collection. Some of the 22 projects explicitly used things that students had found in the collections.
We received 22 entries and they were remarkable. The top 3 artworks really beautifully reflected the transformation that's happening here at the State Library, but also drew on the riches of the collection, which of course is at the heart of everything we do at the State Library Victoria.
One of the really beautiful moments was when the winners were announced and the realisation that what they're working on is out there in the world as a creative work is a really rewarding experience for the students.
My inspiration came from thinking about the vast history of Victoria's landscape and its traditional owners. The fact that the library is encouraging me in my design and supporting my ideas means a lot.
The library is a special place for me because it's a significant landmark in Victoria that I also go to time and time again. I used hand gestures evoking the notion of gathering, protest and harmony. It retains the importance of the forecourt being a place that belongs to the public.
We were encouraged to take inspiration from the State Library collection itself. For my project, I was really taken by old images of flora and fauna. So I'm super excited to have my work in front of the State Library. It's the biggest piece I've ever made.
The library is such an inspiring place, and we hope the artwork will remind people who are walking by just how much value there is in this beautiful collection and this beautiful building. We hope it inspires all Victorians and all visitors.
So the logistics of moving just under 5 kilometres of collection, running the parallel construction of a new off-site storage facility to house them in, relocating staff into a newly fitted out offices, managing construction schedules so as not to impact users or tenants, and keeping the doors open every day of the build was complex to say the least. But after 5 years, we completed our Vision 2020 project on budget, on time and true to the designs and our purpose, and we're very proud of what was achieved. So have a look. So the completed library redevelopment was open to the public on the 5th of December 2020. We could see immediately that the designs were working as intended. Traffic flows were seamless, people were finding their way to the new spaces and they were using them really well. Now, the first show in our new exhibition gallery was attracting record numbers, and the once dead zone of the east side of our building that you can see here had become a humming community space. Our users were delighted, we were delighted, and everything looked to be going to plan. Then, as we all know, just 3 months later, COVID-19 changed all that. A year ago, actually to the day, we walked out of the library and closed its doors for the longest period in its 165-year history. As you know, Melbourne's lockdowns have been the longest and most severe in Australia. For 230 days, the library was no longer a physical service, but a virtual one. But that didn't mean the work of Vision 2020 was for nothing. In fact, the work done to inform its design, to inform the needs that it needed to respond to, helped us focus our efforts as we made the digital pivot. For children and families for whom homeschooling was now a reality, We programmed storytime readings and dozens of creative workshops via Zoom and with on-demand video. For our entrepreneurs, we hosted an online festival to connect them with some of Australia's leading minds in the startup world. As a place of trusted information, we created online events with experts in health, the economy and education that helped people understand what was going on. These events created social connection in a time of profound isolation and uncertainty. And the Vision 2020 project had given us great insight into how important the library is to people's sense of community, belonging and well-being, and that stood us in good stead. When the library building could no longer provide a space for calm contemplation, we created a series of bibliotherapy podcasts to help our community find relief from the daily anxieties of COVID-19 lockdown. In the pandemic moment, these things were important. And now, as we emerge from acute crisis, our doors are open again. We are discovering that the design principles we use for Vision 2020 are now paying other unexpected dividends. A global pandemic was not why we increased our public spaces by 40%, but because we did, we can allow our users in and have them use the library safely. More open spaces, less crowding in thoroughfares and greater distance between desks and easy to clean surfaces have all been made possible for COVID-safe operations. And as we look to the recovery, Vision 2020 will play a critical role. At the design stage, the library made the choice to incorporate video streaming and conferencing technology broadly throughout the site. At first, this was to improve our connectivity to regional Victoria and other cultural and educational institutions around the world. But now, of course, that potential has come into its own. As international borders remain closed, the library becomes a bridge between continents, allowing communal participation in international conferences, lectures and cultural events. And at the same time, technologies make it possible for the library to share its physical events more widely and more accessibly than ever before. For the staff of the library, the technology installed as part of Vision 2020 has allowed a hybrid working model to actually work. With Vision 2020 creating our early stage entrepreneur centre, Start Space, the library is now positioned to provide real help in an employment crisis. For many who have lost work in COVID, the training and opportunities that Start Space provides will be a lifeline. And thanks to Vision 2020, the library will be a driver for reviving trade in the city of Melbourne, which has been crippled by the loss of work commuters. Public activities programmed in our newly equipped spaces will rebuild community and give people confidence to gather together. New venues for festivals, exhibitions, lectures and workshops will give people a reason to visit the city. These are all design outcomes, and by designing in a flexible and future-facing way, we've been able to meet the COVID challenge and return real value to our communities. That was a choice that was made when the library's first designs were penned in over 165 years ago. And from the very beginning, State Library Victoria was built as an expression of confidence in the potential of people. It was designed to evolve and grow, and it has for generations. It was always a library built for the benefit of everyone, a people's university built for a changing world. And because that vision persists, because we know our evolution will never be finished, we can feel confident that we will be ready for whatever comes next and be a partner in Victoria's success for many years to come. And now that travel is something we can contemplate again, hopefully, I invite you all to see the transformed library for yourselves, and I look forward to welcoming you there when you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was a wonderful and inspiring talk about 2020 vision. I'm sure when you had the 2020 vision, you had absolutely no idea what the reality would be. And the way in which the building developments have been used to adapt to the real circumstances is probably even a greater verification of the accuracy of the vision. We have a couple of questions questions that have come in. One concerns the Russell Street entrance. How is it working? For those people who don't know where the State Library of Victoria is, it is on the corner of two streets. Are people using the Russell Street entrance as you envisioned?
Yeah, they are. It's really funny because at the library, we still have to get out of the habit of calling the Swanston Street entrance the main entrance, because they're both equally used. And in fact, the slide that you saw where I talked about the whole site being split in two as part of the staging of the build meant that there was a significant period of time where the Swanston Street, so what used to be the main entrance of the library, was closed to the public for about a year. And that meant that people had to use the Russell Street entrance, which was new. And so once they'd found that, they wanted to return. We also moved our readings bookshop commercial venture up there and one of our new cafe offers. And also, if you come through the Russell Street entrance, for the whole of the city block, because those 23 buildings at State Library Victoria make up a whole city block. So if you come in through the Russell Street entrance, you go through the new welcome zone, and for the whole of the block, you go through collection spaces. So from Redmond Barry Reading Room, Arts Reading Room, the Heritage Collection Reading Room, Cowan Paintings displays, through the Dome and the La Trobe collections, and now through to the Ian Potter Queen's Hall with its collections. So you get a whole city block worth of library spaces that have books available for you to look at in them.
That sounds excellent. Another question. There has been talk about turning the State Library of Victoria inside out to make it more visible and attractive from the exterior. Has this been achieved?
I think it has. I think that the ways in which we are looking at the State Library as not just the buildings, but as all of the things that it offers online, and some of the initiatives that we've made in terms of making the lighting and projections on the outside of the building have helped that. But also the design thinking in trying to get members of the public who come in to use our new Vision 2020 spaces to understand the breadth of what we offer. The architects opened up between the Russell Street end to the Swanston Street end really an internal laneway. And so it feels more like you're walking around a block, a city block of the city, rather than somewhere that's protected and enclosed. So I think we have achieved that.
You talked about a heritage building, and those of us who've worked in heritage buildings, they can be seen as an awesome burden or an amazing opportunity. Now, you've clearly done the second. How have you brought the staff along with you in getting the vision through the organisation?
So so the Vision 2020 is the name, obviously, for the design and the physical building project and the capital works, the build. We had a parallel project called 2020 Ready. And that was a series of about, over the course of the build, about 80 separate individual projects that were about re-looking at the way we operate in the State Library and getting ready to use the spaces and work and service all of our communities in different ways. And I think that parallel approach of having a capital building and a physical design project and a project that looks at bringing staff along with us, at the way that it would change the way they worked, how it would overcome frustrations that they'd felt in the past. I think that approach worked very well.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you for such an inspiring presentation on how the State Library of Victoria has transformed itself for 2020 and indeed 2020 into the future. We will now have please join with me at home, everywhere, wherever you are in your workplace, thanking Sarah.
Thanks, Janine.
And we now have a 2-minute break before our next session. Thank you, Sarah.